Dinner Party, a podcast all about hit social deduction game Blood on the Clock Tower and the distinguished opinions of its players. Joining myself, Mia Gwen, in visiting the Duchess tonight, my first guest thought that Judge Dredd and Judge John Deed were the same thing. It's Danielle. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
Hello there, I'm Danielle. You may have seen me on various Clock Tower streams, including Only Daz, Patters, and Arif. I also do a lot of in-person storytelling around London and Worthing, and I volunteer at a lot of board game and Clock Tower conventions like ClockersCon and AirCon.
It's delightful to have you here. My second guest reconstructed Only Connect in PowerPoint after a single episode of Both Will Be Executed. It's Kuro. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
Hi, I'm Kuro. You might know me from Arif streams as well as from the avatars of a bunch of players on Arif streams because I like to draw.
Yeah, and you're also the artist in residence for this podcast.
Good point.
Yeah. All right, Danielle, would you like to go ahead and share your opinion first?
Yes. My opinion is that the Amnesiac is not a fun character. Which might be mildly controversial because I know that there's a lot of people out there who absolutely love having an amnesiac on the script or being the amnesiac, but that is not aligned with my opinion. I think it has a great idea behind it. You know, you have an ability and you don't know what it is. That's cool. That's mysterious. It's very Clock Tower. But I think in practice, it's not fun. It's not fun as a player or as a storyteller. I feel like as a player, at least when I've been the amnesiac, I feel like I'm just on a bit of a back foot compared to the rest of the good team because I'm trying to work out, well, what is my ability? How is this actually helping town? And then that sort of detracts me from solving the actual puzzle of good and evil that we normally work with as the good team. And then on the opposite end of that, as the storyteller, I think it's hard to come up with an ability that is fun, that is different enough from anything that's already in the Clock Tower spectrum, that is solvable but not immediately obvious, and that isn't like OP and completely steamrolls the evil team for town.
I agree with you in some respects there, but I will say that both of those parts sometimes balance each other for me, where an amnesiac might have a really strong ability but not figure it out before they die, and I know that some people run amnesiacs guessing after death, etc., but that's something else we can talk about, I suppose. But you might give an amnesiac a really good ability and then they guess completely the wrong things and it doesn't solve the game, but it could have solved the game for them, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I also am interested in it being bad for town in terms of maybe I really like the This Is Not My Beautiful House, JC's World Cup script, which made the amnesiac an outsider and which maybe fits better with how you see it, I wonder.
Yeah, no, and now you've said that, I definitely think that the amnesiac does feel more outsidery to me because, yeah, like I say, it feels like it's just a big distraction, both for the player who is the amnesiac and also for town, and also sometimes for the storyteller who's maybe trying to run something really wonderful and amazing for the amnesiac in the background. And again, I've had that experience as a storyteller where at least I think I've come up with a wonderful ability, but you know, for various reasons, either amnesiac is made drunk or poisoned or is executed early or killed by the demon. So I just feel like you never quite get that payoff that you do with other roles. And it's interesting because I mean, I've played and run in many veiled games and with the Loric games now with the tour, and I don't mind that. I think that's really fun because everyone's on that same level of like, okay, none of us know who we are or what our ability is, but the amnesiac just feels like you're in a bit of a back foot to the rest of town, so I would see it more as an outsider.
I have several points I want to discuss on this. Firstly, when you talk about coming up with abilities and ensuring that there isn't overlap with other clock tower or with like a unique ability, I think it's okay to have, let's say, a backlog of amnesiac abilities that you just maybe recycle. One that I've used quite frequently is just like it's something along the lines of like learn the character of the first player that publicly claimed amnesiac or a player that claimed amnesiac yesterday. Because quite often people like claiming amnesiac and doing things. It's a way to interact with that. It's a low stakes way to interact with that. So I think the sort of pressure of this must be a unique ability is perhaps something that storytellers impose upon themselves, and that can make it unfun as a storyteller. I think if you just go in with like a this is an ability I've run before, but that's okay. Because that's also not the strongest ability ever. And if I have a reputation of I might pick from 5 abilities that I've run before, it allows evil to bluff those abilities better, because I think that's one of the challenges with the amnesiac is as an evil player bluffing it and coming up with something. So I think it's almost self-imposed pressure by storytellers that they want something that is, they want the amnesiac to be a central figure piece of the game. And like, maybe it's okay for the amnesiac to be the washerwoman. The washerwoman isn't a game-defining character, but Trouble Brewing would be worse off if it wasn't on that script, I think.
I also think that when you say that you can get very distracted and on the back foot because you're having to solve this ability basically solo without town, but talking to a player who's died very early who you have a read on as good and basically bringing them into the circle so that they can help you solve can be a really nice way of extending that olive branch and a problem shared is a problem halved, so that you've got 2 brains working on it instead of just one. Which I find quite a nice little play pattern. And also, I will say that I do like the overlap between amnesiac abilities that, it's fun for evil to know what sort of abilities that Mia might run, yes, but it's also fun to basically pretend the amnesiac is a crazy xenomancer quest, because I have often heard people go, they have to be the amnesiac because this is such a stupid ability that there's no way they're making this up on their own.
Yeah, do you know, I think both of you have made excellent points there. I know, especially when I've story told. I think it's kind of like the whole, I don't know what you'd call it, but the content phenomenon, as I refer to it, particularly with popular clock tower streamers or YouTube channels like Patters and No Rules Barred. Something happens once in a stream or in a game and it's hilarious, it's a great bit, it's a great moment, and so then it tries to get replicated in like normal quote unquote day-to-day game. So it's kind of like trying to live up to that expectation of, oh wow, I watched the latest No Rules Barred does clock tower, and they had this amazing, crazy amnesiac ability. Like, okay, right, I now have to live up to that. And so I think it's definitely a great idea having, as you say, sort of a backlog of, 5 to 8 abilities that you can keep in rotation or tweak and add and remove as time goes on. I definitely think that's a good point. And then, yeah, also, Kuro, like, you're right that amnesiac does sort of help foster those more player-on-player conversations of trying to get the solve. I unfortunately have been in the position several times where I have completely trusted members of town to help me solve my ability, and they've been evil and have just led me completely up the wrong path. So I feel like I just don't trust anybody now, which is not a bad thing, but also, yeah, I think it has hindered, is given left that bitter taste, shall we say, that bitter taste in my mouth. So like, it's not that it's a character that I think needs to be eradicated completely from Clock Tower. There's other characters I have opinions on about that, but this is not one of them. I just think it needs either classifying as an outsider or it needs tweaking in some way. What that way is, I'm not 100% sure on yet. I've been musing.
So I have a suggestion here. I think this was a game with Jams running. And I was the amnesiac, and each night I was landing a player. I spent 2 days asking Jams, is this my ability? Is this my ability? I wasn't getting anywhere. And then at one point Jams offered me, instead of asking a question today, I would be given a clue as to my ability. I don't remember what that clue ended up being, but it essentially, I got that clue and it meant I solved my ability. And it's now a thing that when I'm a player with an amnesiac, and I'm the amnesiac, I will go to a storyteller and say, hey, instead of asking a question today, can you give me a clue about my ability? It's something that I find most storytellers are willing and open to, Fundamentally, the purpose of the question is for you to understand your ability better. So trading in that question for a clue is a sensible way. They both achieve the same objective of helping you understand your ability better. So I think approaching storytellers and asking them that is a way that you can remove some of that frustration. But I think it's something that more people should do, and also more storytellers should offer, because I don't often see that as like a thing that people do or storytellers offer.
Also, it adds basically more fisherman advice into the game.
Oh yeah, you can never have enough fisherman advice, but I think that's actually a fantastic idea. Both as a player, I would definitely rather be getting clues towards my ability than sort of blind guessing, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see if it sticks. And as a storyteller, you want your players to solve, like how you want the good team to solve the game, and you also want evil to solve the strategy of staying alive. You want your amnesiac to solve their ability and see that light bulb moment. So that's definitely something I would be keeping in mind now for future games, is offering the clue versus question.
What I will say is that I don't think you necessarily want the amnesiac to solve in even most games. Like, I think, especially if you're running strong abilities, you want it to be something where they might get towards it but not necessarily be able to. But it depends on how you run it as an individual storyteller. Also, to your point about how storytellers might see a game that was run on Pattis's streams or on No Rolls Barred and go, oh, that was a really cool ability and I want to replicate something like that in my own games, and then have that go wrong or poorly because it's not a stream game and players might not react the same way. I think that is definitely not a problem that is unique to the Amnesiac. Like, I mean, in particular, I have strong memories of an occasion when we had an alchemist Mezephiles who had the word "the" and basically formed their own evil team as a result, but the storyteller had attempted to do that a game before, and then we'd had to have a reset on day one, and they then tried it again because they'd read on a Reddit post that it made a great game, and it did not make a great game. It made a very frustrating game for literally everyone involved. But yeah, so these things are sort of endemic to like the storytellers as opposed to the role the Amnesiac specifically, I think.
Yeah, I remember at the last Clockers Con, it wasn't a guest run game, just a game run by a couple of lovely people in the community, and the amnesiac ability involved a Wordle at night, and I thought, oh, that's an amazing idea that the player has to do the Wordle, and the closer they get, they'll find out their ability, etc. And then I tried doing it a couple of months later in the session I was running, but unfortunately the person who drew Amnesiac was a young child of about 9 or 10. And so even though they'd heard of Wordle, didn't really know how to solve it and what the colours meant. And we're just like, and you could just seeing the frustration. And they're like, what am I doing? Why are you showing me all these like randomly coloured squares and letters? They're so far from it. Like, okay, yeah, I think for each crazy shenanigan you want to run, by all means, like, attempt it, but tweak it for your audience, right?
Yeah, and I think there's grace to pivoting, much like placing the drunk token at the end of the first night, changing direction with your amnesiac. If you have them choose 2 players, one of them immediately dies, and you then decide to change the actual ability, is a time-honored tradition in Clock Tower. So having the colours mean something else instead of it being Wordle might not have been, the worst idea, but it's always easier to see those things in retrospect, isn't it?
I want to discuss your point you made slightly earlier about how you don't want amnesiacs to have sort of overpowered abilities or game-defining abilities. I want to shout out Navian and Mollybok, who ran a game for me recently where I was the amnesiac in a Pope game. And my ability was each night choose a good character and learn if there are a duplicate in play, which in itself is quite a strong ability, but they made that ability less powerful by essentially adding a once per game clause. So once I found an ability that was duplicated, that was it. My ability was done, and I thought that was a really good way of limiting my ability. It meant that I could say that there were multiple of a character in play, but in that game there were duplicate mutants and duplicate nobles. I'd guessed noble early on, so I couldn't then also work out if there were duplicate nobles. I think another way as well to limit the power of a role is have inbuilt misinformation. There are loads of characters in Clock Tower, the fortune teller, the savant. These have inbuilt misinformation. It doesn't matter if you get poisoned, you're still going to receive something that isn't true sometime. And I think that's another good mechanic to factor in. Obviously, you need to make the amnesiac aware that this is part of their ability when they guess. So if if their ability is X, and so if they guess that their ability is X, but their ability is X plus once per game get misinformation, just tell them they've also got misinformation once. It's not fun for them to then be like figuring out that last bit. I think there are ways to still have abilities that can seem powerful that you can still rein in through like other methods that are used within Clock Tower characters, which is quite good.
I also adore a powerful ability that links in with what the evil team might be. So if you give an Amnesiac an ability that has to do with a word or phrase, and there's a Mez or a Yagababble on the script, that sort of acts as an inbuilt distraction for the evil team, while at the same time giving you a good ability that might be quite strong in the solve, but also makes Town trust you less.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I don't think I've ever really been in games where the Amni ability is sort of like directly linked to the evil team. So I think that'd be something very interesting to sort of see and experience.
I think the one other thing I'd like to talk about is something you've mentioned a bit, which is the Amnesiac is one of those characters where there are a couple of things about it that are run quite differently depending on storytellers in a mechanics way. For example, at the beginning of any game which has the Amnesiac on it, the storyteller basically needs to clarify whether ability guesses are poisoned when the Amnesiac is poisoned, and whether the Amnesiac can guess after death or not. And that's not something you get with many other characters where there is such a variance based on, even if you read the almanac, that's not clear.
Yeah, I know there's some storytellers who allow like the puzzle master to guess their puzzle drunk target even when they're dead. And again, that's
What?
Yeah, that's an opinion for another time, Mia. I disagree. I disagree strongly with that. But then I'm very much on the side of I don't let amnesiacs guess after death either. I'm a bit of a harsh taskmaster on that. But I have been in games where people are like, I can still guess and I'm dead, right? And I'm like, no, you cannot. But I think yeah.
I think fundamentally, as an amnesiac, it is more fun at the end of the day to be able to know what your ability is. And I think that rules such as even if you are poisoned, your guesses are still true, you can still guess when you are dead, funnel towards that of like, I'm giving you as much as I can to correctly get your ability. Personally, I think that like, especially if like you get one night of information and then die, that is when the amnesiac is an outsider. And I think that just allow guessing after death. It's okay.
So I fully agree with not poisoning the amnes information, like guesses if they, or not guesses but not information if they have been poisoned. The after death thing, I definitely think depends on what is on the script, because if there's a pixie on the script, I don't think you should let the amni guess, because there might be another amni in play at that point who's making their own guesses, and when you've got two different amnis with two different abilities making two different guesses, that's multiple solves going on that could have like variably strong abilities that might define the game too much.
Sure, but then my players will just meta that they can't guess now because there's a pixie amnesiac.
And that is why you must never meta the storyteller.
So I think if the pixie is on the script at all, you shouldn't let an amni guess after death. Is my position.
Okay, sure. I don't have a response for that one.
Mia's now got a new opinion to present at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, and I've changed my opinion to one about Mez alchemist words, so we're all good. That is, I think, pretty uncontroversial, and I think that everyone here is going to agree with me, and all the listeners as well, which is that Blood in the Clock Tower is better online than in person.
Thank you for attending, Kuro. Your segment is going to have to be cut short, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that this is a controversial statement that is not likely to get much agreement from pretty much any corner except the most hardcore of the unofficial Discord. But which I know is not necessarily something I want to align myself with, but what I will say is that my history with Clock Tower is primarily online based. I am not an unbiased source here. Most of my games have been online as opposed to in person. But I have to say that the reason that most of my games have been online rather in person is because it is so much easier to play online. It is so much easier to re-rack online. It is so much easier to just spin up a spontaneous game online. Whereas anything that is in person, although it can create great experiences, those experiences have to be scheduled a month out. And then on the day, you might have a couple people drop out and you're like, oh, we can't play. And you can't just invite someone who hasn't, it requires a lot more logistical management than an online game. And that is, I think, what makes me like the spontaneity of the online option far more.
I mean, I definitely agree with you on the logistics part. Like, yeah, obviously much quicker to re-rack, sub in players, arrange games. Totally get what you're saying there. I also think playing online is a lot easier on the good team in terms of solving. When I play online, I write a lot of notes within the app, but when I play in person, I've never taken notes. One because I'm
Notebooks.
yeah. Oh no, I'm not against taking notes. I'm a very slow hand writer, and I don't like to sort of keep looking down when I'm trying to talk to people, whereas online I can touch type and I can type a lot faster than I write. So I definitely take notes in that sense. But I think with online you do miss the social part of social deduction. I know there's some people have cameras on and obviously you can hear people talking so you can pick up certain nuances, but you're never going to quite get that same feeling of like, oh, that person's eyes are shifting, you know, when they're talking, or making it sound romantic now, but you know, glances thrown across the town square as the poisoner is trying to signal to their imp, like, you know, I'll poison so and so tonight. You know, I as a good player, I've caught out evil teams that way, and I've been caught out as an evil character that way. And it's just, it adds to the thrill, I find.
I totally take your point, and I do agree that, again, this is my personal history interfering with my opinion, but don't they all? Which is that my group that I played with before joining Harif's streams was one where we all knew each other in real life, and we all played with cameras on, and I think that really affects the social aspect of online games as well, because it means that you know people in the flesh before you then play with them online, and that does make solves easier in a social sense. Yeah.
Kuro, we're going to go to some conventions and you're going to realize how wrong this opinion is.
I'd say convention games, like last game of the con, like, you know, really early hours of the morning when everyone's sleep deprived and should have been in bed 3 hours ago. They are the best.
Yeah.
They are the best games. It's like a high that I've never experienced before. My friends literally thought my drinks had been spiked because of how delirious I was with Clock Tower happiness. It's just the best. And also it's a way you get to meet, obviously you can meet new people online, we do, but you know, and we're spread out all across the world, which is fantastic. But playing in person, whether that's in regular groups or at conventions, it's just, you get that more human contact. And maybe I'm biased because I started off playing in person. I was sort of a latecomer to online, and I'm very fortunate that because I'm sort of London based, I run my own sessions once a month, and I play and run sort of here, there, everywhere several times a month. So I'm probably I'm very lucky. I'm very, what's the word? Fortunate, thank you. Yeah, I'm very fortunate in terms of like where I'm based, that I can easily access a lot of in-person games that rarely get cancelled and are normally like oversubscribed, if anything. But I do know that feeling of like when first starting out, desperate to run a game, and you've arranged it all, like you say, a month in advance, and there's exactly 7 players and 1 storyteller, and then 2 people drop out, so you're like, okay, we're going to drop to teensies, it's fine, and then 1 more person drops, you're like, oh, okay, right, we can't play anymore. That can be heartbreaking. So I totally see where you're coming from.
I also will admit to the fact that this is maybe not my most ardently held belief, but I do think that it is really interesting to consider the differences in online versus physical play, especially when it comes to things like, you know, the matron or whatever, where you've got characters that function differently or not at all well in certain contexts. You know, my initial opinion that I considered bringing on was that characters, you don't that it's not necessary to design characters both for online and for physical, because sometimes that can be to the detriment of both, which with the most obvious example being the Wraith and its online implementation. But you know, it's a jumping off point, and I will certainly attempt to attend some conventions in the future, and we'll see if my opinion shifts thereafter.
I'm gonna align myself with your opinion ever so slightly, which is that I have a rule for when playing in person, which is that I won't travel the number sort of fluctuates, but if I'm traveling to play Clock Tower, I want to play Clock Tower for at least 1.5 times the amount of time that I spent traveling there, and that also includes traveling back. So if it's 2 hours to get somewhere, then that's 4 hours round trip. So I probably want to play about 6 hours of Clock Tower or that 4 hours of traveling. So I do think that like online is much easier for that commute. You know, if I were to do that for online, the commute is about a minute. So long as I play 2.5 minutes of Clock Tower, we're good.
Sorry, Mia, just to confirm, when you said that you include travelling in that time, do you mean that you're not willing to play Travellers when you go to a Clock Tower in person, or have I misunderstood completely?
I think you've comedically misunderstood there, Kuro. But I think like yes, Clock Tower. I fundamentally think Clock Tower in person is a better experience, but that doesn't mean that like it's an experience. Like I'm not gonna travel 8 hours for a single game of Clock Tower. That would be mad to me.
Yeah, I was recently invited to a Clock Tower thing that would be a single day trip that would take a 5-hour round trip journey to get there, and I wanted to go, but I couldn't justify it just because, you know, it's too much.
Yeah, it's different if it's a convention where, okay, I'm traveling for 2, 3, 4 hours, but I'm then going to spend the next 2.5 days solely clock towering. And then, you know, and come away feeling like amazing, but a lot worse for wear.
I was going to say that the main reason you travel to conventions is surely just to play the gang, and the Clock Tower is an extra part, a bonus to that.
Oh yeah, of course. They are, you know, it's Ravenswood gang with some Clock Tower maybe if we're feeling up to it.
Exactly.
Can I suggest a slightly different opinion that I think maybe is more what your opinion is trying to get at, which is simply that event organizers are the best people.
I could fully get on board with that. I mean, local board game cafes are run by saints who, you know, accept that. So you definitely shouldn't execute them, is my opinion.
Yeah, even if it's an atheist script, we're not executing the friendly local board game cafe owners. So what I will say is, I always feel like online Clock Tower versus in-person Clock Tower is like a Kindle versus a real book. Like a Kindle is great, it's efficient, it's lightweight. It's accessible for most people, but nothing really beats the feel and smell of a real book. And again, if you've been at conventions, everyone shall know the smell of that last night game of Clock Tower when everyone should have had a shower 5 hours ago. But you can't beat it.
As with Kindle books or online publishing, you can get experiences with that you won't get in a conventionally published book, where you won't, you know, you're less willing. Again, this is from what you've said about the final game of conventions, you may get more unconventional things towards the end of a full weekend of playing Clock Tower, but the willingness for people to be stupid right up front with weird scripts online is quite nice to me. Whereas when you go to a board game cafe to play some Clock Tower, it's usually base 3, and then they do half of the 108, and then they do Sex and Violence, and it's, you know, the willingness to branch out, because you've got to accommodate a bunch of new time players who want to do Trouble Brewing first, of course, or who should do Trouble Brewing first, but means that you get a bit less adventurous as a result, in my experience.
I think there are absolutely board game cafes and like Clock Tower meetups where it is predominantly experienced players, and you can just go and they will be playing like Fall of Rome that week. One thing I want to, I guess, say is that fundamentally the online experience and in-person experience, I think, are still ultimately complementary to each other. I think a lot of people wouldn't play in person if they hadn't first played online. I think that online allows people who maybe primarily play in person and only get to play every so often to get to play more often, which means that when they then meet up in person, they can be like, oh, I now understand SMV, I now understand BMR, I'm happy to move on to a Fall of Rome or whatever that next custom script looks like. And one thing I also want to really highlight is like, it's really lovely playing with someone online first and then meeting them in person after you've like formed an online friendship. And it's one of the things that I really love about cons is meeting people that I like have really good deep friendships with, and like actually meeting them in person is like, it's one of the best things.
Yeah, I will say 100%. My first Clock Tower like proper convention was Clockers Con last year, and having people recognise me was a really nice experience that would never have happened if I hadn't played online first. But also the recognition would never have happened if I hadn't gone to the in-person thing. So they definitely do support each other and lift each other up.
Evil teams should break up minion townsfolk pairings. What do I mean by this? I'm going to use Trouble Brewing as the obvious example. In Trouble Brewing, the evil team have a spy and there is no Undertaker in the game, so the spy decides to bluff Undertaker. And Town go, well, this player's claiming to be the Undertaker, and we think there's a spy in the game, so they're probably just the spy. Stop doing this. If you are the spy in a game without an Undertaker, you're probably telling your demon the Grim anyways. Let your demon take the Undertaker bluff, such that when Town go, oh, the Undertaker is probably evil, therefore they're probably the spy, they're less likely. Like, they still have worked out broadly that you're evil, but they're more likely to execute someone else as opposed to you on the basis that you're currently the spy. I think that there are some other examples of this. For example, BMR, the Devil's Advocate, and basically any execution survival role. It's always, oh, if you're bluffing Sailor, then you're just probably the Devil's Advocate. Maybe protect your demon and then let your demon bluff Sailor for the day, and then they survive execution. And then Town will probably be like, oh, you're just the Devil's Advocate. Probably doesn't work as well in BMR just because of you tend to execute Devil's Advocates at about final 8, but break up the pairing. It's always sad isn't quite the right word, disappointment when like evil teams fall into those roles based on their own role. You should break it up, like destroy that pairing is my opinion.
The number of times I've seen an evil twin player claim to be the role they've seen instead of giving that role to their demon is just so disappointing to me. I personally think that they should give that bluff to the demon so that people will be really confused. But yeah, I do take your point. But this is more of a meta strategy then, isn't it? Where it's you're trying to shuffle around the roles between the minions and demons so that people can no longer definitively tell who they should execute and at what time, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So although it might not pay off in an individual game, in the long arc of time, it'll gradually change the meta of your particular group.
I mean, I think even like in a single game, it can probably work. I think currently, like especially the groups I play in, the metas are very entrenched in the like spy equals Undertaker. So I think even like in a single game, branching out from that is enough of a boon for the evil team that good won't consider it. And then like it's just good and healthy to change metas, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that this opinion will change the meta around this, but it's something I want evil teams to consider.
Yeah, and I really like it, actually. I mean, I think it's just about, as with most things, just evil team coordination. Because I remember I ran a game of just Trouble Brewing, had a spy, had a demon, had Undertaker as a bluff. Demon's like, great, I'm going to take Undertaker as the bluff. Because they just assumed a spy would be in play because of that bluff, but then the spy was going around also claiming Undertaker, so it quickly unraveled on like day one and evil team was found out. So it's like with all evil team, it just needs that coordination of like, right, I know this is the Grim, but you take this. But it is, you just do fall into those metas, those tropes of like, oh well, yeah, I'm the spy, so I'm going to claim Undertaker, and it means I can then nominate the Virgin, so it also makes me look really good. Da 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 da.
Yeah, what I will say is that my group's meta has historically been that if they realise that someone is the Undertaker claiming spy, then they will execute that player. So if the demon is claiming to be the Undertaker, they would just kill the demon.
I guess it is that thing. It is also, you know, the groups you play with. Like if you're running Trouble Brewing for like a whole new bunch of new players for the first time, you know, they're not going to think about, oh, Undertaker's a great bluff for the spy, or if a Virgin execution goes off, they all automatically, I hear it so many times, like, oh, well, they must be good, right? They must be good, and I have to sort of proffer those words of like, well, you know, it could be, but just, you know, read the spy's ability. I'm not saying that so and so is the spy, but you know, they might be. You know, especially if you're brand new to the game, and there's a lot of people who've not even like, it's their first experience of Clock Tower at all. They've not seen any videos. They have no idea what it's about. They just think it's something, quote unquote, like the Traitors. And I was like, yes, it is like the Traitors, but much better. But yeah, but it is. But then like literally they'll play one game and then we're like, okay, yeah, we'll play again, and then straight away they then feel like, okay, so Mia nominated Kuro. Kuro said that the Virgin Mia was executed. Oh, but that doesn't mean Mia's good. And like straight away, it just feels like the game is almost built in with these mechanics to be thought of. You know, it's like almost like.
Oh, it absolutely is. Of like Undertaker is an incredibly hard blah, and the spy exists so the evil team can claim to be the Undertaker. But it does just mean that one, the spy naturally falls into that role, and also two, I think evil teams bluff Undertaker incorrectly a lot. I think a lot of the Trouble Brewing characters are actually really hard to bluff. Specifically the Empath and the Undertaker. In that, if you're the Undertaker and you start going around giving true information for like too long to build social trust, that's gonna come back and bite you later mechanically.
It solves the game because you can't build a world, yeah.
You end up implicating yourself.
I think the meta is for the demon to not know whether they have a spy, to claim they're the Undertaker, and then to see drunk every single night.
I know someone who has won a game by as the imp bluffing Undertaker, who I believe saw Virgin every single night. And I should highlight this was in like a very experienced group, to the best of my knowledge. They're like these are players who like could have been like, well, this is fucking bullshit, right? And they somehow won.
There's absolutely a refuge in audacity, as with amnesiacs who say that they have to speak in Russian for an entire day, where something is so stupid that it will work better on experienced players because they're like, this is not how the game works, therefore there must be an explanation that has to be storyteller based for this, as opposed to just someone doing a really weird bluff. But yeah, I think I absolutely love when people do that and it actually manages, they carry it off successfully.
I think there is definitely a tipping point in as like with audacity, as you say, of like, okay, you're being silly for the bit, and like we don't really believe you, and now you've done this for 2 days. Okay, we're slowly starting to actually believe you. By like day 5, where players are like, I will die on this hill that this bullshit that you're claiming has actually happened. And like seeing that journey throughout a game is always great.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what would life be without bits? Very boring.
Would I'm trying to search for other examples of minion townsfolk metas. Would another example be a baron always bluffing an outsider, or like what are you thinking?
I think that's a common one. Not an example of a minion townsfolk pairing, but of an evil townsfolk pairing is Professor and Shabaloth. I think it's okay. Like the Shabaloth seem to always go into Professor. It's okay for a minion to take Professor, and then town to be like, oh, well, they're probably the Shabaloth. Let's just kill them instead.
Yeah, and also that waste momentum. Yeah. Also, but I mean, my personal favorite is Serenovus Golem, in order to prove someone as. Oh no, wait, yeah.
Serenovus Virgin.
Serenovus Virgin. Golem would make no sense there at all. Yes, you're quite right. I said it and then like completely stunlocked myself as I tried to figure out what the hell I meant.
I was just saying, sort of to your point earlier, basically BM are the devil's advocate in nearly every other role on that script, like devil's advocate fool, devil's advocate tea lady protected, devil's advocate pacifist, like, which is one of my main reasons why I just don't enjoy Bad Moon Rising at all. There's too many variants for everything, but very easy, I think, for minions, like you say, have that pairing on that script.
An SMV example is Serenovus Dreamer. Making someone mad as Clockmaker, then claiming to dream them as the Clockmaker. Is another one that I often see. It's quite risky, I think, that one. I think that will backfire on you, so maybe just accept being the Serenovus and don't let your demon do that instead.
One of my favourite things as Serenovus, which, I mean, you have to sort of take a punt that there is no evil twin in play, but I've done it several times and it's never not been funny, is making somebody Sarah mad as, say, the seamstress, and then waking up on day 1 and saying, okay, well, Kuro's my evil twin, like, I'm actually the seamstress, and the Kuro's like, well, no, I'm the seamstress, because I was a bit, to be fair, I was a bit mean, I did it with it. They weren't a brand new player, I will caveat, they were not a brand new player, but they hadn't played a lot, and they were so worried about breaking madness, I managed to Sarah lock them for like 4 days in this twin pest. Everyone just left us.
I love this idea.
It was great. It was really funny, and like the person who I did it to, like, took it in good spirit. It was a really funny game, but basically it just meant, even though, you know, if the demon had died, obviously game would have ended, etc. We did end up winning, but just keeping them Sarah just the seamstress, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know, I woke up, saw that you're the evil twin and I'm the seamstress, but they were just terrified of breaking madness. So I think you can also have that pairing of not just minion and townsfolk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other like counter it like demon versus minion, like whether a boffin seeing the role they have provided to their demon and then bluffing that role and basically taking it from the demon so that when people are like, oh, we think there's a boffin in play, they go for the boffin instead of the demon.
Potentially. I mean, even if they don't want to do it as a go for, but now that we've got the Pope, Lorik can just be like, oh no, we're just duplicated, but I trust them because I know that I play, you know.
I think if you are the boffin and you're granting a role to your demon, never claim that role. Don't put it in Good's head that that role might be in play. Like, let Town have to reach the possibility of like a boffin Philo in play making someone drunk, as opposed to just the demon claiming Philo, who then went, oh, I chose this character, and they actually chose a different character. Never claim it.
But what if it's like a mundane role, like boffin washerwoman or something?
No, I trust that a storyteller doing Boffin Washerwoman is like telling me the Ravenkeeper is one of these two players, and I am never killing them.
And also not outing that info to Town, yeah.
Yeah, or I'm like killing them night two. One or the other.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like there's nothing ever wrong with a demon killing a Ravenkeeper as long as it's early enough, because that's when they're going to have the most time to dilute the squash, as I say. Or if I have had it, you kill the Ravenkeeper night two, they do pick the demon who's like, oh well, that's weird, but that's fine, execute me, because I know I've got a Scarlet Woman hopefully somewhere. Not exactly related, and maybe this is a topic you're covering in a future podcast, but just because we've been talking a lot about the spy, what are your opinions for in-person games of allowing the spy to take a photo of the Grim on their phone?
Maybe this is online bias, but given that any player will just screen cap it, I feel like it should be treated with similar leniency in person.
Yeah, I don't mind. I think what I've done, I don't mind it so much when it's new players, because obviously you're already bombarding them with, like, it's not a ton of rules, but there is a lot of information to absorb at the beginning of Clock Tower. So I do tend to have more leeway there. If I'm running for players who I know are experienced, I'll be like, okay, you can take a photo on the first night to sort of like get acclimatized to who everybody is. But then after that, no. So you're going to have to remember like who's been poisoned, who's seen this, seen that, etc.
But like, I would argue that does go the other way as well, because town criers and flower girls can vote track with a lot more ease than in person, where you're trying to mentally keep track of the 10 players who voted on like after the third nomination.
I think that's the thing as well, sort of going back to your point of like earlier of online being better than in person. I feel like online is better for the evil team in terms of it's easier to hide, and things like the spy or the widow, like you just screen cap that information.